How many times have you said to yourself, I need to get an assistant psychologist job. If I don't get an assistant psychologist job, that's it. My whole dream of being a psychologist is over. Have you not realized by now that there's no such thing as a perfect job? Being an assistant psychologist is actually one of the hardest jobs you can ever have. It's one of the most confusing and scariest jobs that you'll ever have. And in this video, this is exactly what we're going to talk about. So sit back, relax, because we're going to spill the tea on what it's like being an assistant psychologist. I've even got some biscuits for everyone. So while you're an assistant psychologist, one of two things will happen to you whilst you're an assistant psychologist. The first thing is probably the most scariest and something that happened when I was an assistant psychologist. People that aren't within the psychology world don't actually know what assistant psychologists do. So they just assume, just like their profession, that as soon as you've got your psychology degree, you are a qualified psychologist. You can make every diagnosis, you can write any report, you can do any assessment, and that's exactly what they'll do. They will come to you and ask you so many questions that you have no idea about. And then when you look at them and say, I don't know, I'm just the assistant, they'll say, and come on, sort this out. There'll be so many times when you'll sit there and you'll think, I have no idea what's going on. I am not qualified to have this conversation or to make these decisions. But that's exactly the situation and the positions that other people will put you through. Now, hopefully you'll have a supervisor that will be able to see this and to try and put a stop to it. But that's not the case in every service. In some services, you might actually be one of two assistant psychologists with one qualified psychologist. As soon as they leave, you're now the qualified psychologist. You make the decisions. You have to go to those meetings. You have to speak to commissioners. You need to set up this service. You need to do this. And it's actually so overwhelming for a lot of psychology graduates. The second thing that's more than likely that's going to happen is you're going to be seen as a glorified admin person. Now, what I mean by that is you're going to be seen from other professionals, and even in some cases from the psychologists themselves, as someone that's meant to run around, file these files, make these phone calls, do all the stuff that you'd expect someone from an admin perspective to do. Half the time, you will not be doing anything clinical or anything to do with what actual psychologists do. And this is actually the reality. A lot of people will say, I want an assistant psychologist job. I want an assistant psychologist job. But realistically, when they actually become one, it's nothing like they expected. They think, and this is probably what you probably think that being an assistant psychologist, you're following around the clinical psychologist or the forensic psychologist or the health psychologist, and you're going to be doing exactly what they do. You know, you're going to be seeing patients, you're going to be doing all these fun assessments, but really, that's not the case. You're probably a person that's going to be making the phone calls, make sure that everything's sorted for that particular patient. But when it actually comes to actually seeing the patient, you might be the person that just sat in the corner, just write a few notes. Unfortunately, this is the reality, but this is something that if you're experiencing this as an assistant psychologist, this is an opportunity to have a conversation with your supervisor. A lot of the time, psychologists don't know if they're challenging you enough or if they're challenging you too much. So you need to have that conversation. You need to pluck it up and say in your supervision, listen, this is what's happening. This is the reality. I am either not comfortable with how much I'm doing or I'm not comfortable with how little I'm doing. You know, you're a psychology graduate. You're there to learn. And the final point is probably the hardest. Like, I would rather have the first 2 points than this final point, and that is imposter syndrome. Like, this is one of the worst parts about being an assistant psychologist. You will doubt yourself every single day. This is something that happened to me. As soon as I became an AP, I thought, yes, okay, I've made it now. Like, I have to do this. But I always had that little voice in the back of my head that said, well, what if they made a mistake? What if you get there on your first day and they're like, oh, we didn't mean you, we meant the other person. See you later. You know, this is all the stuff that was going through my head, and it was something that I almost threw myself into the job role in the first 6 months because I was so fearful that someone was going to say, actually, no, it wasn't supposed to be you. Go on, you can leave now. And I know that this is something that a lot of assistant psychologists struggle with because it's something that they've put on a pedestal for so long, and then now that they've actually got there, it's not what they expected, or they have this thought of, well, why me? Why did they choose me? And that really hinders their, enjoying the experience. And it's just something I wanted to bring to light today for everyone that's watching this video that's aspiring to be an assistant psychologist. It's not as glamorous as you think. There are downsides. It's probably more downsides than upsides. We're not saying don't go for these types of job roles. All that we're saying is we just want you to have both sides of the story. Yes, there's amazing things that you'll learn whilst being an assistant assistant psychologist. You'll have some of the most amazing experiences of your career, but also there is a flip side. There's no such thing as a perfect job role, and that includes being an assistant psychologist. And that's it, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Psychologist. Can you please do us a massive favor and click that subscribe button? We are trying to hit our goal of hitting 10,000 subscribers by the end of 2019. I hope you enjoyed this tea session. Take some biscuits with you, and I'll see you next time.